Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. We're a podcast about board games where we have opinions and conclusions formed on the basis of incomplete information. This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is brought to you by these great Saskatoon businesses: Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street, Dragon's Den Games on 8th Street, MrDiceGuy.com, and Breakout Escape Rooms on Faithful Avenue. Welcome to Cardboard Conjecture. I'm your host, Norm.
I'm Ryan.
I'm Ian.
And on this episode, I'll be talking about Hansa Teutonica. Ian?
I'm going to talk about LowLands.
Ryan?
And I'm going to be talking about Fabled Fruit. Goop, goop, goop.
What was that?
I'm drinking juice.
Cardboard Conjecture is proudly sponsored by Amazing Stories Comics on 8th Street in Saskatoon. They are the winner of the Joe Shuster Award for Best Comic Book Store in Canada, and they were also nominated in 2016 for the U.S. Eisner Spirit of Comics Retailer Award presented at Comic-Con. Amazing Stories' amazing collection of comic books, board games, puzzles, and collectibles can be found in their store or on their new online website. And we are back. This is Cardboard Conjecture, and we talk about board games. And in this segment, we're going to talk about...
Really? Is that what we do these days?
Some board game stuff. Yeah. Staring at the computer lately. No, playing, thinking, and doing board games. Ian, you get to take the point on this.
Okay. So I managed to get another game of Eclipse in.
Oh, yay.
I love Eclipse. I know Ryan is all Twilight Imperium and, Eclipse is just a baby version of that.
Whoa.
Blah, blah.
I've never actually said that.
Well,
I may be thinking it.
Your body language has said it many times.
But I love Eclipse. It's a great game. It's a great space exploration battling game. And I'm pretty sure, we'd have to do some research on this, but I'm pretty sure I have the record of playing the worst game of Eclipse of all time amongst anybody.
I've yet to play it, so I could challenge that.
I made 2 points, which if you've played Eclipse is not good.
That's a feat.
It was a bad game. So I redeemed myself this weekend, and I finally won a game of Eclipse.
Wow. Congratulations. Let's insert the clapping here.
Now, is that one of those sandboxy type games?
Not really.
I wouldn't call it sandbox.
It's not like Zaya, is it?
It's got rounds.
Okay.
It's got rounds to it.
Yeah, and you're basically just trying to conquer as many planets as you can as your goal, right? So
how many players did you guys get?
3. Just
okay.
3. Yeah. But
is it balanced at 3 though? Do you think it's balanced at 3?
Sure.
Okay. Because I mean the stated superior TI4, the games of that I've played, you have to have a full player count for it to be any value.
I think it's better with more players, but 3 is fine. Like it's not that detrimental. There's usually one guy who kind of gets off scot-free a little bit, but not so much this time. So I think one of the great things about Eclipse is that it's got a strong ending to the game. Do you find that, Ryan?
Yeah. I've always found like the climactical part of the game is getting down to those final battles.
Yeah.
To get those last few areas for those last few points. They're very, and everybody's chucking like a mitt full of dice each.
Yeah.
To try to just take down everybody. It's very epic ending.
And this one was for sure because it came down to a final battle for the center spot, and that final battle made the difference. So whoever won the game. And so it was great. So it was me and Matt, and we both had pretty comparable ships. Luckily, the other player blocked him from bringing any more ships into me. And so that helped me out a lot. And the battle itself was actually very back and forth. He'd kill one of my ships, I'd kill one of his, he'd kill one of mine, I'd kill one of his. And finally I came out through in the end. So I finally have a win of Eclipse under my belt. and I'm excited.
Golf clap. Cool. Well, I'll jump in here because mine is kind of short and sweet, as is the games that I'm going to tell you that I played.
Yeah, these are neat.
Well, and I'm starting to dig, and I think I talked about that before, the whole condensed version of the stronger sibling game. And these, what I'm talking about is Ticket to Ride London and Ticket to Ride New York. Just recently got a whole bunch of games of those in. And so Ticket to Ride London, and both these games are, I would say, a shrunken version of the original base game kind of thing. So Ticket to Ride London, same system where you're set collecting, and on your turn you're either picking up cards or you're putting down connections or you're picking up tickets. And you're just making points in that manner. So Ticket to Ride London has all the classic destinations like Globe Theatre, Buckingham Palace, right? London Tower. Nice little map, a tight little board, probably like, 1.5 feet by 2 feet kind of thing. The smaller cards, obviously. So everything's shrunken down as far as how this game is being approached. I still found it has the same level of excitement. It has the same level of choices. It's fast, which is awesome. I think it's like 15 to 20 minutes. So the London one's really cool. The New York one is like all Ticket to Ride versions. I would say the big box versions. These are the small box versions, if I'm going to use that term. Each big box version has their own little take on the game. So the same thing with New York, where at first I got kind of freaked out. Where on the outside of the board you usually find the score tracker. Well, on New York there is no score tracker on the outside of the board. It is one of those little pad score sheet things that you total up at the end of it. So you've got Manhattan as your map for New York. In London, instead of using trains, they use double-decker buses. In New York, they use cabs. And yeah, so
that's a cool touch.
Yeah, so the cards are reflective too, and a lot of subways in the card art kind of thing. But in New York, same structure of picking up cards, putting down routes, claiming tickets. It's the Manhattan map, and again, all of the famous New York Manhattan landmarks make up this map. Now, the little twist on it, like every Ticket to Ride, is that you get an extra. There's a little kind of copper penny on it, but you get an extra point if any of your routes has any of the tourist attractions as as one of its endpoints, right? So that's kind of like the bonus where you're trying to gobble up. Maybe you're just gobbling up these routes because there's a bonus point at each end of it, right? So, man, I had so much fun with these two, right? Really good price point comparatively. And yeah, they're like the small box Ticket to Ride. So I like this idea of what they're doing with it. And I'm kind of curious where they want to go with it. So Ian, you're the Ticket to Ride guy. So
yeah, did you say this is 2-player only or 2 and 3?
No, you could go 4-player.
Really?
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah,
I was gonna say these look like they would be fit into like that 2-player only kind of line.
It does a good job because it's such a tight map that you could still play a healthy 2-player game. And I've played all the way up to 4-player. Now the 4-player, holy man, does that thing end fast, right? Because you're gobbling up this territory instantly.
Well, yeah, they're saying games of 10 to 15 minutes play length.
Oh yeah,
that's short.
It's great. It's so
much
much
a good
fun.
cabin game for sure.
Yeah, so I totally recommend those two. I mean, we've been playing it a lot at the lake, so it's one of those perfect kind of, appeals to everybody games. So there you go.
Cool.
Ticket to Ride, London and New York.
I didn't know those.
Ryan, I'm so tempted to buy this game. I don't want to listen to what you got to say about it.
Oh man, because I go full junkie mode in this game. Oh, this game is so good. This was my number one game from 2019.
And what is the name of this game?
Well, if you didn't listen to that or you didn't follow me on Twitter, it was Marvel Champions. Marvel Champions, which got lots of comparison to Marvel Legendary, but they're two completely different types of games. Where Legendary is a deck builder, this one is a deck. You have to build your deck ahead of time, then you go and you battle your big bad of the scenario. But yeah, Marvel Champions, and I finally just got to play the Doctor Strange hero deck, the Sorcerer Supreme himself, and wow, I was very impressed. I've bought everything for this game so far, and I've been very impressed with the Doctor Strange deck more than the other ones, because they did something different with the Doctor Strange, where he has another separate deck of cards. It's only got 5 cards in it, and they call it the Invocation deck. And man, what you have there is you can pull off some really crazy, stupid combos to deal either high damage or draw extra cards into your hand. And like, his basics self doesn't do a whole heck of a lot against the big bad, but if you can combo it with these invocation cards and the other cards that are in his deck, man, like so I played a couple of games. I played against Rhino, the basic Rhino, which is in the core box. He's like kind of like the first villain you play against, and the whole course of the whole game, Rhino did 2 damage to me the entire game because of what Doctor Strange was doing. I was stunning the enemies. I was confusing the enemies. I was then dealing damage here, left, right, and center, pulling off some mad combos. And I was like, wow, I've never like had a game go by so easily with against like a villain. And then I tried it against Ultron, which is like the hardest villain in the core box.
Oh, you jumped to the max then.
And then I still pulled out a win, but it was much more tighter because Ultron does crazy things against you. And then I played a 2-handed player. I did Doctor Strange and I did Thor. I also bought the Thor pack, and we took on the Wrecking Crew and managed to just barely squeeze out a win there because they comboed so well together. Marvel Champions is a fantastic game. I'm starting to run out of room in my core box with all of the packs that I've bought for this already. But that's going to be solved very shortly because they're going to come out with the Rise of the Red Skull expansion. It's a big box expansion, so they're coming up with like 5 new villains, a bunch of new heroes to play, and they're.
I hear a Terraforming Mars joke coming up pretty quick here.
No, no, it's just housed in a different box so that you can put all your extra cards into, much like what Hero Realms does when they come out with those other boxes.
Cool.
And just kind of store your other kings. And
do these ones? How do these ones rank with the heroes that you have already?
So Doctor Strange is by far my favorite one now to play with. He's so unique.
Cool.
The other ones, Thor is very. I don't know what they did, or maybe we haven't figured him out yet, but Thor was very underwhelming. He doesn't generate a lot of kapow. Like he doesn't really hit as often and with a lot of power like you would see him do in the movies or anything like that. So I don't know if we just haven't figured out how to play him as a character. Though the one
maybe you're not worthy.
I know. I can never find the hammer in the deck anyways. And the next one that's coming out actually in a couple of weeks, there's a new hero coming out. They're actually releasing a Hulk pack. And so that one might
you got to have Hulk. He's like one of the big ones.
Oh yeah.
He should be in the main box. Why isn't he
Yeah.
So Hulk is in the main box, but he's kind of like those separate those ally cards. He's not his own separate hero. You have She-Hulk.
He's not in the main box.
But now he will be, and I'm pretty sure he'll end up being, even if they can't make him weak. You can't make Hulk weak.
Please tell me they at least have Spider-Man in the main box.
Oh yeah.
Okay, good.
All right, good.
And then part of the first wave of packs released was Captain America, and Captain America was awesome. Like, he's really good too.
Nice. See, now I gotta go buy that game. Oh,
amazing stories. Amazing Stories has it in stock.
Woo.
And a whole bunch of the packs.
This
This episode of Cardboard Conjecture is proudly sponsored by Dragon's Den Games, located in the Louis VIII Mall on 8th Street in Saskatoon. Swing by Dragon's Den Games and let Darren, Al, and the awesome staff help you out in search for great board games, role-playing games, miniature systems, and all of the related accessories. Be a part of their gaming communities that have scheduled events in their great gaming area. Dragon's Den Games, Louis VIII Mall on 8th Street in Saskatoon. And we are back. This is Cardboard Conjecture, and this is time for the reviews. Ryan, let's start it. I see your name right after this. Let's start us off with some
Juice making.
Some juice. Look. I get it now.
Let's squeeze those fruits into some juices. Some of those fabled juices. Yeah, I'm going to be talking about Fabled Fruit. Now, this was a game that was provided to us by Stronghold Games. I'll put that out there.
Thank you, Stronghold.
It was part of a large box of games that kind of showed up on my doorstep, and I was very grateful. So we're going to be using those. One of those games was Fabled Fruit, and this was on my radar for a long time, and I just never ever got a chance to actually getting around to getting it. So Fabled Fruit, it's designed by Friedman Freeze. Shocker, because it's the double F or an F word game, which is what he likes to do. It's published in North America by Stronghold Games, like we said, and it was released in 2016. It plays 2 to 5 players with a single game session. Yeah, it plays about 20 to 30 minutes. So it's a nice short and sweet game, but I'll get to that. It's a much bigger than that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's do the dramatic overview. Once upon a time, there was a marvelous forest full of gorgeous fruits. These fruits could be squeezed and mixed into most delicious juices. You live in a forest and are in search of the most savory fruits. Friendly forest dwellers will help you in different ways. You are greedy and thirsty. Who will be the first to satisfy their appetite for Fabled Fruit? Doesn't that make you want to play this game so much better? So Fabled Fruit is a Fable game. It was at the time, it was his new and unique concept in a game experience where the gameplay changed over time. Well, wait a minute. I've heard that term before. Gameplay is changing over time. Okay. The game starts in an initial very simple state, but as you explore deeper into the game system, the mechanisms and gameplay will evolve over time. Again, I think I've heard this before. You play the game many times, and each play changes the game slightly. Oh, I thought I've heard this before. Unlike a legacy game, all right. However, the game is never permanently changed, and at any time you may easily restart a Fable game from the beginning, either after you've run through the entire game system or at any time that the many plays you'll get from this game. So he kind of created a legacy-ish type of system where the game just kind of just goes over, it just kind of evolves over the game. Okay, nuts and bolts. How does this thing, what's going on here? So to win a game of Fabled Fruit, you must make a certain number of fabled juices based on your player count. So like an example, we've been playing 2-player games. So to win a game, you need to create 5 juices. In a 3-player game, you need to create 4. In 4 and 5-player games, you need to create 3 juices. At its core, this is a worker placement game. In each of the players, you only have just one worker. You'll never get any more. You'll just have just the one worker. And you assume a role of one of the animals in the forest. Like I'm playing a turtle, and Jen's playing an elephant right now. So, yep. and what this turtle and this elephant are trying to do is we're just trying to gain fruits, which are represented by cards, and to make juices, which is kind of like a contract fulfillment type of thing. The first game starts with just 6 locations in play, and they are represented by stacks of 4 cards. Each card is exactly the same in a stack, and these locations are both the action space, where players will go to gain the fruits in some way, and they're also, at the bottom of the card, is the necessary fruit combination to make a juice. So it's both the action space, and it's also the contract that you have to kind of fulfill. So when a player places their little, I forgot to mention that they're little animeeples. So like my meeple is actually a turtle and her meeple is actually an elephant, which is kind of kind of cool. When a player places their enemy meeple on a card location, you're either going to take the action or you're going to make a juice. That's literally all there is to this game. I am either going to take a location or I'm going to make a juice.
Cool.
If there's already somebody there, you have to pay them a fruit. You have to give them a fruit if I want to take a location that somebody is already on. When a player makes juice, they take the top card of that deck. So like I said, all these locations have 4 cards in them. If I go to a location and I want to make the juice, I now remove one of those cards, flip it over, it has a little bottle of juice on it. And now I've made that. Now there's only 3 cards left in that stack. Also, what's going to happen is that after I remove a card, there's a big, massive stack of location cards. And after I remove a location card, I have to now add a new location card to the available actions. So there's where the game is going to change over time as we are going to be fulfilling these contracts. I'm going to be taking these cards away from the tableau, and I'm going to be adding new cards to the tableau. So this is where the game is going to progress. Once a player creates the required number of fruits, the round ends, and so that everybody has taken an equal number of turns. If multiple players create the required number of juices in the same round, the tiebreaker goes to whoever has the most fruit left over. And if there's still a tie, they share the victory. They're all happy animals here. So that's a game of Fabled Fruit. It's when I'll say it's a very basic worker placement.
Okay,
It's what's going on here. So,
cool.
My opinions. The box is very Friedman Freeze, which means it's green. It's very green.
It's not easy being green.
This box also suffers from the too much box for the components included syndrome.
Splendor syndrome.
Because literally all it is, it's 3 decks of cards and a couple of meeples and some tokens, and then you're done. That the box is way too big. Like, it's kind of like your medium-sized Euro box. It could have easily been shrunk down. Now, on that note, though, they did make the cards are tarot-sized. So
okay.
they're nice big cards, which is good with the style of game because these cards are the locations you're taking. Mm-hmm. So if I'm placing multiple meeples, you should still be able to read the card and know what it does, which happens here. You can still, there's multiple meeples on a tile or on one of these cards. You'll be able to still see what that card actually still does.
Well, that's good.
Okay. On that note, there are no icons in this game. It is all text every day, all day. So it is very language dependent. So you may want, if you're interested in this, you have to probably pick up a copy in your language because they don't have any icons telling you what is done. There's a little bit of abbreviated text at the top of the card. But what we've seen is sometimes that abbreviated text is very abbreviated, as in it doesn't tell you exactly what you need to do if you take that action. So some are very misleading. I really like the cartoon animals that are provided on the art here. It's very family friendly, very family oriented. Regan has really drawn to that. He really likes all the cards that are in play. Like, he watches us play sometimes. He wants to know what the rhinoceros is doing. He wants to know what the hippo is doing.
Cool.
They're very family friendly. Okay, there are a lot of location actions where you interact with the other players at the table. So this caught us by surprise here. This is great. You're not playing a solitaire game until you meet the end game condition. Amongst the initial 6 locations, those initial 6, 3 of them you have to interact with the other player or other players at the table. So I really kind of like this. I won't spoil what the other cards are in the deck in case you want to play this and you want to see what it is. But there's quite a few cards there where you have to interact with the other players at the table. It's really, really cool. I was not expecting that for this type of game. There is lots of take that in this game. So if you're not a fan of being screwed over by what the other players are doing, you're probably not going to like this game.
And you've been playing this 2 players, so I want to hear some conclusions with that.
The gameplay is simple worker placement, resource management, contract fulfillment. But it's this Fabled system that freezes design and makes this game kind of very interesting. It's not legacy, so no permanent allocations, but the gameplay does evolve over time. The locations change constantly as you're fulfilling contracts and new ones are coming out. This is going to change every game that you play. As in these very first 6 cards, it was okay. It's very basic. Like, I'm trading in some cards. I'm going to trade cards with you until I get my right combination. I fulfill my fruits. Now the interactions of some of these cards are so much more than just simple, oh, I trade one with you and you trade one with me type things. So there's lots of stuff that's coming out here. Jen and I have been playing this 2-player and have played 11 games so far. So I'm winning 6 games to 5 so far.
Barely winning.
Barely winning. And every game is played so vastly different. It's very, very unique. And
Cool.
to kind of give you the scope of how many times you're going to play this before you see all the locations. So we've completed 11 games. And the highest location card so far has been location 31. There are 59 locations in this deck of cards.
And there's
there's
like
4,
halfway through.
and there's 4 of each. So every time that you make one, another one comes out. And so every 4 times you complete a contract, a new location is going to come out. So yeah, we're just over halfway. And yeah, and every game is played so differently, which is kind of really kind of neat. When I just say it's very just simple worker placement, but the interactions of those location cards have all done something completely different.
Cool.
Okay, conclusions. If any of these things, what I'm about to say, if you like these in games, you should give Fabled Fruit a try. If you like simple worker placement gameplay, you like player interaction, and you like evolving gameplay, you're going to like this game. If you decide to play through the whole game and see all 59 locations, you're probably looking at 20 plus games. So just know that you're probably, but note, a game only lasts 20 to 30 minutes. Like and even some of our games didn't even last 20 minutes yet.
Okay.
So they play. So you can play multiple sessions in an evening, and you're going to get good value out of this game for how many times you're probably going to end up playing it.
Awesome.
So Jen and I are playing this game 2-player right now. I do not recommend this game at 2-player. I absolutely do not. This is one of those games that suffers from, it says it can play at 2 players. You should not play this at 2 players. There are just too many location cards where it's the player interaction is the key. And we've come across locations where it's like, why would I do that? There's only just one other person that I'm going to be trading with. This would be so much better if I was playing with 4 people. I would have 3 other people that I'd be trading with at the same time, and I'd be getting much better value out of that location than so those ones just end up being like, we never use those locations. We just use them just to fulfill the contract and then just get it out of the game type of deal.
Or the box should have just said 3-player to 6-player.
Well, it's working fine at 2 players. I just would say it's definitely not the way that you're going to best experience this game.
Okay.
At all. So I mentioned here that I would love to play this at 4-player. I think that's going to be the sweet spot. There's going to be just enough competition over locations. There's going to be just the right amount of player interaction there just to make things a little bit more interesting. I was excited to play this game. It seems exactly what I wanted to play with, kind of like a Gen. But once we play the game through all the locations and maybe play this game more with some more players, I'm going to be done with it. Mm-hmm. Once I see everything and I've played it through all the whole way, I'm probably going to say, yeah, you know what? It's run its course. I'm going to be played at a buttload of times. So with that being said, I'm putting this on the bottom shelf of the collection.
Okay.
I'm probably going to try to play, if I still have it, I'm going to try to play this with Regan when he's a little older. Like, again, he can't read yet. So the text on the cards is not going to be where it's going to be at. If it doesn't pique his interest, it's going to go for the for sale trade pile. It's probably just going to pass it on to other people to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that said, this game has a lot of bright spots to it. There's a lot of things that people are going to enjoy. Like I said, if you enjoy simple worker placement, if you like player interaction, and you like that evolving gameplay, you're probably going to get some good value out of this game. Just note that once you're done it, you're probably going to be done with it.
Okay.
I look forward to seeing what Freeze does with this Fabled system. Like, I know he has a Fabled expansion for Power Grid. He actually created a deck of cards called it the Fabled expansion. So, and with Power Grid, like it said, it would have like some sort of conditions on it, and then once it's met, then you kind of like, you know, you move to the next, and so you play a series of games of Power Grid in kind of like a legacy style. But
That's intriguing.
It's this Fabled, but I haven't seen him do anything else with this Fabled system. I want him to explore this because I think it's kind of a neat legacy-ish type thing where you don't permanently alter the game, but the game still evolves in a way. So.
Okay.
I can't make up my own locations and write them on the board. I'm not interested.
I need stickers and a Sharpie, gosh darn it.
And
that's the way I likes it.
Choices to be permanent.
Yep.
So,
right.
That's Fabled Fruit. Like, again, I'll probably pass it on to you guys to see what you think about it. But
sure.
No, that it's very enjoyable right now. Like, we keep saying, like, we just play 1 or 2 games a night. Like, say, well, mainly because now Jen and I have a competition going of who's going to win the most games by the end of it. And so, but like right now, we've got locations out where we're constantly like stealing stuff from each other, and then there's a market, and we're trading cards with the market, and then we're stealing each other's cards, and then, oh, if I have the least amount of cards in my hand, I get to draw 5 cards, and now if you're the richest, oh, I get to take 2 of your cards, and there's a lot of crazy things that are going on right now. Right. Much different than the original state, where it's just like, draw 2 cards, trade 1 card with the other player. So and there's a lot of the tokens we haven't even used yet. Like I said, it comes with cardboard tokens, and lots of them they haven't even come up yet, and we're halfway through the deck.
Are they going to all come up, do you think? Like, there's not a situation where there's part of the game you won't ever play with. You probably see everything, right?
Yeah, you're going to see everything if you play, because it's just the massive deck of cards. All the location cards are in one big deck, and they're all in order.
All right.
You just play through it. So that is Fabled Fruit, Friedman Freeze, and Stronghold Games. This episode is proudly supported by the amazing team at Breakout Escape and Board Game Lounge from right here in Saskatoon. Using industry-leading technology, Breakout Escape's escape rooms are all 100% uniquely designed by the team, ensuring their patrons have maximum fun while staying safe. As well, they are a fully licensed board game lounge with over 400 titles to select from to ensure fun for every gamer, new and experienced. Be sure to check them out at breakoutsask.com. At Breakout Escapes and Game Lounge, they believe that life is more fun when you play games.
Cool. Well, I'm going to take this to an even drier level.
You thought that was boring.
If you thought that was dry, well, wait till you get some, like, it's like, I need some Jolly Ranchers kind of replay. So I absolutely adore this dry German Euro, Hansa Teutonica, designed by Andres Stedding, published by Argentum Verlag. Came out in 2009. It plays 2 to 5 players, and the box says the games take between 45 and 90 minutes, and they're pretty accurate with that times. So the overview of nuts and bolts: the players act as traders trying to get victory points for building a network of offices, controlling cities, collecting bonus markers, or when other traders use the cities they control, they get victory points. It's dry in here. Your teeth are drying up too. After controlling a line between 2 cities with your pawns, you can decide to build an office. Doesn't that sound even more exciting? Or to get skill improvement from some of the cities. Players have to improve their trader skills for the following effects: getting more victory points from offices in their networks. This has never been done before. And getting more available action points, increasing the number of available pawns, getting the right place to the pawns, and more special power pawns. If this does not sound like juicy dry Euros, cube pushing. I don't know what's more interesting or not. So
I'm looking at the pictures right now, and
so Hansa Teutonica, as I've been mockingly saying, is a Euro cube pusher based in Germany during the medieval times. It's a network and route building game that's driven by an action point mechanism. So within this whole game, there's all of these mini games of area control and area influence going on all over the board with regards to who is controlling the various offices in the various towns and the cities on the map. Because I keep repeating that the majority of points gained in this game is the networks that you build, right? These small competitions are going on all over. And while you are trying to subtly improve your player board's game engine, while not attracting any attention from the other players, and all the while trying to intuit what your opponents are attempting to do as to not let them go too far ahead in their player powers. So there's this interesting gameplay going on these 5 little areas, because you have this game board that is connected to the powers on the player board with connected to the powers on the game board. So to understand the game, you must understand the parts of the engine that you are trying to create. So on your player board, which looks like a medieval desk, right? There's theme. People say Euros don't have theme. The cardboard cutout looks like a desk you're working at. You're an administrator. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's medieval Excel spreadsheet. This is what this game is.
The player board does look actually pretty cool.
It looks cool. It's 2009. They didn't have any kind of laser cut programming back then. I bet you somebody did this by hand, man. Okay, so
they didn't have computers.
That's how it worked.
So on your player board, which, like I said, looks like this medieval business desk, you have these different areas. So one area is activities. So the number of actions that you can have on your turn, and it starts off with 3 actions. And one of the ideas of this game is you want to push this meter all the way up to 5 actions per turn. But you want to not do this in such a manner that you attract attention, because people are going to want to get in your way. That'll make sense as I move on here. So on your board, there's an area called the privilege level. There's basic 1 to all the way up to 4. So that's kind of the idea of increasing your company's magnitude or power. Level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Level 1's only going to get you so far. You're going to have to always improve your company, because that'll get you into better offices, which will have you controlling more networks, which will generate more victory points. It's all this beautiful mesh web of interconnectivity and very dry cube pushing. So you have on your player board the Book of Lore, which I refer to as the helicopter power. Indicates how many of your own cubes and discs you can move on the game board to any other space on the game board. On your player board, you also have this thing called the money bags, and it indicates the amount of cubes and discs that you can take from your stock to your personal supply. So there's that balance of how many resources do I have at my disposal, or how many do I have to start replenishing. It's very, very kind of like a balancing act, I would say sometimes. And the town keys is the last area on your player board. These keys either multiply by 1, 2, 3, or 4 times your longest network. So a lot of people will get caught up in improving their player board game engine and forget about this kind of end of game condition that all of a sudden sneaks up on you so fast. So the next question is, how do I work to get my engine better? Well, on your turn, because you have 3 actions, you can allocate resources, which means moving the money bag action to get more of your cubes available to you to get onto the board, which is the next action I'm going to talk about, which is placing and displacing resource cubes and discs. This is the coolest part of the game, because a resource is a cube or disc, as I said, and that in your inventory, when you put on the board, when you're placing resources, it's kind of like a lot of people equate it to Ticket to Ride when you claim a route. But this one, you can't really claim the entire route. So you can claim a fraction of the route. Once the route is completely connected, you are able to, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but you're able to claim that route. But when you're placing your cubes on, you're basically trying to create these completed routes that will trigger putting an office in. Now, as I said, this is the beauty of this game. This is what I'm going to talk about. That unique mechanism part is the part of this game is wanting to get in the way of people's building of these networks. You want to put your cube in like, let's say in a route of 4 available spaces, Ryan puts 3 of his cubes in there and there's an empty one. Well, I'm going to put my cube in that empty spot because if he wants to claim that route, he has to kick me out. And by displacing me or kicking me out, that's where the beauty of this game comes in, because you can do it, but you get penalized and I get rewarded. If I get kicked out, I get an extra cube or I get an extra disc to put on an adjacent route. So there is that whole strategy and that idea of the displacing and placing discs. Another action is the moving resources, which I call the helicopter move.
Now that might be breaking the theme, Norm. That might be.
Yeah, but I mean, the game says that you're rearranging your resources, which I can understand, where it's like, okay, I've got overstaff in this area of my network, so I'm going to move them over to this region because I'm understaffed in this region. And I think that's what the game explains. But hey, it's a helicopter. Everybody loves helicopters. So that's the idea, is that you can rearrange your allocated resources and basically pull them off of areas of the map and put them into different areas of the map, instantaneously occupying a whole route. So that's that whole element of the game where you can pull a fast one on people because they're not paying attention to the ultimate big picture. And finally, once you establish a trade route, you can claim that trade route. Now, here's the beauty of this game as well. In claiming a trade route, you get 2 choices. You can either put an office in one of the terminal cities on either end of that route, which creates this connected network that is basically your idea of the game, of having this network building with the end of game multipliers. Or you can up your engine, depending if you pick the right cities that you're creating these routes in. You can decide, I'm going to, instead of putting an office space in, I'm going to upgrade my player board. And as I said, the upgrade cities are connected to the player board cities. And so if you're working on a trade route that's connected to a specialized cities that's going to increase your action, a lot of other people might go, I'm going to get in your way and make that just a little, I'm going to benefit from being a pain in the butt in your route building because I know I can see you're going to upgrade your actions. Or how do you win this game? Yeah, it's a shocker. It's a Euro shocker. Victory points, my friends.
Oh, I was going to go control most territories.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of the idea, right? With generating points. So how do you get victory points?
Now, is it most points wins?
Most points wins, right? So you get points for controlling, being the major office controller. I didn't catch that sarcasm there. So dry that it went right past me. You get victory points for like every good Euro board where you have a meter. If you can get to the max slots of your meters, you can trigger victory point conditions. There's bonus markers that I won't get into because that isn't, another 10 minutes of explaining how they can be a functional part of your strategy. And the offices that you control. And then basically down, like I said, the most important part of this game is that network and the keys. So you get victory points obtained by your largest network and the end of game bonus multipliers. Add all these up and the person with the most victory points wins the game. So my opinions, and I have many, and they're all they're all positive except for the artistic interpretations. And we'll start off right now from the outside in, the box cover. This has got to be the ugliest box cover that has ever been published and printed. And I'm even talking like bad calendars from the little kiosks that you see in the Christmas malls, right?
This is bad medieval art that museums wouldn't even allow.
It's pretty bland.
Yeah, in my notes, the only value is the jokes that you can come up with on how bad this art is.
This guy's mustache is, I don't know what that is all about.
What was the your cousin's little saying whenever they saw this guy?
Sven Svedersen.
Yes, this looks like Sven Svedersen.
Yeah, and they'd have the worst accent, but oh man, it is by far, I think the best joy is what kind of mocking you can attribute to this image. So yeah, it's so awful that
poor guy's probably listening to our podcast now crying.
It's so but it's like cult classic. It's like Valley Girl, Eraserhead. They're so bad they're good. Right. The components. Well, I mean, there's just kind of two materials in this thing. It's cardboard and cubes, cardboard and little wooden components. So you can't really, go far off the rails with that one. And as I put, it's Vulcan in its simplicity. There's no over the top with this. With these components.
It's your standard 2009 Euro.
Yeah. Yeah. Cubes of the same size. I mean, this could even be mistaken for El Grande components. The rule book, 2009. Let's just say translations and rule books did not really jive back then. Probably one of the more difficult rule books to interpret. I had to go to BGG and like download errata and watch about 3 different visual versions on how they interpreted different rules. I think I've got this down, right? The game system, this is where I should insert like a choir singing right now. The game system is an absolute joy because there is no randomness. There is no luck in this game at all. There's a standard set of action rules and in such a different way to implement them that depending on the actions and the behaviors of the others and the state of the board when it comes to your turn, everything is a tactical, intelligent, delicious choice. This is where the depth exists because you're playing the game state and you're playing the people at the board, at the table. And my favorite is I think of Bruce Lee, right? You're bending like a reed in the wind. If there's too many people going after trying to do a certain upgrade, well, there's something being ignored that nobody's paying attention to that can get exploited, right, by just you. That's that whole paying attention part. The unique mechanisms I basically clued into it is that displacement idea of, the goal of this game is to be a pain in the butt and get in the way. So don't be upset if I look at you square in the eyes and smile as I put my cube in that empty route and all of your empty routes, because now I'm thinking I get to overbuild as a reward to your penalty. And when it comes to my turn, that's just part of me. Like that's part of the variable of that acceleration in this game is you need to play up that part of displacement, everybody else's displacement. Does this all connect? Well, I mean, I've never done too much research on Hanseatic trade, but as far as the game mechanism and the way that you can tinker with the architecture of this game system, to me is just so beautiful because every person at the table is going to play it differently. And you have different people at the table playing this game. So the variability engine for me is like cranking.
Yeah. It's who you play with. That's what's going to make it variable.
Yeah. So the idea, does this all connect? Yeah. This is the sweetest engine. And I get cranky with Splendor being just an engine thing, but yeah, I get it. A lot of people go, it's a mechanism only game. Yeah, but it's so good, right? My conclusions, this game is, like I said, 0% chance, 0% randomness. It is so Vulcan in its cardboard DNA that you basically are playing the game state. This is the quintessential networking, and it's game, and it's proudly on my top shelf. And I didn't even get into the little expansion boards and play of this too. This is just the base game. So I absolutely love this game, and I hope that came across.
This episode is proudly supported by Mr. Dice Guy, an online board game retailer located right here in Saskatoon. Mr. Dice Guy is always stocking the hot new titles, as well as restocking all-time favorites. They even have a ding and dent section for previously played titles. They offer free shipping across Canada on all orders over $200 or free local pickup if you're in the Saskatoon area. Check them out at MrDiceGuy.com. Saskatoon's Mr. Nice Guy is Mr. Dice Guy.
No, I couldn't tell that you didn't like this. That you like this game. Now, are you? Now you see you have the expansions. You said that, right?
Yeah.
You already. So you're probably not interested in purchasing the Hansa Teutonica big box.
I'm
Which is
curious.
Just the box, mind you, Norm. Just the box.
It's just the box. It's $100 for just the box and some plastic models of the cubes themselves.
They're cube shaped but plastic.
But you can
Same
print
size.
them out. Yeah, the same size, but they're plastic, right? I don't know, man. Like what I have.
No, all I can see here is that because they're coming out with the big box this year, which is kind of like bringing this game that's been out of print back into print, and just including the expansions and the hard to find actually expansions.
They still have Sven Svenderson on the box, though, right?
I'm looking at it right now.
I hope so.
They've updated. They've got rid of his mustache, which is kind of a shame. He's not as prominent.
Who is he without his mustache? That's his identity.
It's that 70s cop show mustache. It's so awesome, man. It's like Starsky and Hutch all over again.
It's kind of like they took it the same box over, but they kind of like gave it a bit more color. Like when I say a bit, like a dash.
The box cover is so bad. We're making Starsky and Hutch jokes about the box cover. That's how good this box cover is. But I'm just so happy that everybody gets a chance to play this game now, because I'm telling you, if you haven't played this game and you are the type of brain that just does not like to have your game be flipped because of randomness or because of luck, this is all about honing your skills in a big way. So, Ian, have you played this?
I have not. No. Everything you're saying is not necessarily the mechanics, but I'm getting a Kalis vibe in the sense that it's kind of old school Euro, but mean. Right, you can be mean to everybody.
But it's not. That's the displacement thing. Immediately, everybody goes like, "Why are you doing this?" And it's like, no. It's about this. This is what the game is about: is getting in the way and profiting from this. Right? Like if you want to have a monopoly, it's going to be kind of expensive, and So yeah, I can. And everybody else, they got to get over that initial. I would say paper cut.
The ownership idea.
Well, yeah, it's like you don't own the route. You're basically just you're sending your network. You're trying to establish a network. Your market. You're trying to make this market connection. So, yeah, I can't encourage this enough to people. So
I've enjoyed my plays when I've played this with you. It's. Like I say, it is very good. It's mechanically, it's sound.
Yeah.
In its approach,
it's now. You tell me yes or no. For me, at least, it's one of these games that and even if I lose, it's one of these games that I'll sit back and think, you know what, the next time I want to try this.
All right. Well, I didn't because I won both games that I played with you. So.
Definitely editing that out. and this is a perfect time to transition. Ian, what do you have for review?
Okay, so I thought I'd throw a little bit of love at a game that doesn't get a lot of attention. It came out a couple years ago, LowLands.
Yay!
Have you guys heard of this, Ryan? I can't remember if you've played it or not.
Yeah,
I played on my. Go ahead, Ryan.
I played this once with you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I thought so.
And I have it on my shelf of shame.
Oh, do you? You haven't played it?
Yeah.
Well, let's see if I can convince Norm to play it. So, LowLands was produced by Z-Man Games. The designers are C and R Partenheimer. It's 2 to 4 players. I would recommend at least 3, though. You need to play with at least 3. It's about 60 to 90 minutes. And this is a game about drowning sheep. So...
Is that a metaphor?
It is not, but it can be if you want to.
Okay.
Why are sheep such a big deal in board games? Like, board gamers, there's sheep in almost every board game. What is that all about?
I don't know. It seems to be this non-unique, this very unique theme of, like, farming.
Are you trying to say that it's bad?
I'm fine with it. I just think it's a very interesting quirk of our hobby. Anyway, so in this game, you are a shepherd in the Netherlands, and the setting is actually important. I'll get to that in a second. It's important that you're in the Netherlands. And what you're trying to do is you're growing your farm and breeding and buying sheep on your farm and building buildings on it. All that stuff that you do in a lot of these.
Wait a minute, I've heard this before.
This is new to board gaming.
Now, why is the Netherlands important? Well, because the Netherlands is famous for being under a country under sea level, right? And so flooding is a problem in the Netherlands. And so they've got to build dikes and stuff to keep the floodwaters out. And that's the same in this game. And so in this game, players are collectively trying to build a levee that's going to hold back the flood. And so your points in the game are going to come from the sheep that you've got left at the end of the game, all the sheep that you've acquired. And also, you're going to be getting points for contributing to building this dike that's going to keep the floodwaters out. But the point value for both of these is going to be affected by how much flooding actually happens in the game. So there's like a scale that tells you how much sheep are worth and how much contribution points are worth. And what happens in the game affects that scale. So it's kind of like this fluid thing that affects what the end game is going to be. So that's I'll just kind of go through what I think of the game, and I'll talk a little bit more about how the game works as I do that.
You bet.
The box. So the box is kind of cool because it's light colored on one side, dark on the other. So it's kind of got the nice sunny days and then the dangerous flood days. It's got a sly looking little sheep on there. He's up to something.
He's up to shifty eyes.
Yeah, he does. The art is kind of classic, right? So it's kind of more like an early 2000s aesthetic, kind of one of those Eurogame aesthetics. Think of Agricola. Agricola is very comparable to a game like this.
Yeah, I thought this was a Clem's Franz artwork, but it's not. It's Andrea Bolkoff.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like the people are a little bit more realistic than something like Agricola. The wave pieces are really cool because they're kind of blue and stackable. The tiles, I would say, like the iconography on the tiles isn't entirely intuitive. You need the rule book, the appendix, to figure out what they do. So that's too bad. And I'm somebody who loves Race for the Galaxy icons. Like I'm perfectly okay with something like that. I don't know. I don't think they're as intuitive as they could be on these tiles. The turn track, there's a turn track with a bunch of different phases, and that can get a little confusing because it's hard to tell what phase you're in and what you're doing. But I think it's laid out okay. But the rule book, again, you kind of need that to figure it out. The resources are cards, which is, you don't see a lot of that these days. Mostly it's like wooden bits. So this is kind of going back to Catan, where we have our cards are the resources. I would say there's a lot of little rules to keep track of. And so that might be I strike against this game is it can get a little confusing with all the little rules here and there. So like, for example, when you're contributing to building your dike, everybody else actually gets a chance to contribute also on that turn if you decide to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rule that's really easy to miss, but it actually provides a lot more interaction into the game. And so it's important, but really easy to skip over when you're learning it. Also, there's some rules about what resources you can use to build the dike, and it has to be the same resource as what the previous people used, and that can get a little confusing. Now, the way that the game swings, this is why the game is so interesting. So depending on how the game goes, is you may actually not want that flood, or you may not want to stop that flood. You actually may want the floodwaters to break. So let's say you didn't actually invest that much in sheep. Well, maybe you're okay with all the sheep drowning and having everybody else lose their sheep, right? And so the way that the game ends, there's like a final storm. You're building up to this final storm. And if you don't stop that storm, it will kill a bunch of sheep. If you contribute lots to the dike, but the dike still fails, you actually get rewarded for at least trying. And so there's kind of this weird back and forth middle thing that creates some really interesting dynamics in the game, right? So it's almost like you got to find this middle ground between helping everybody, but then screwing them over at some point too.
Cool.
So I don't know, how important is endgame to you guys when you're playing games? Like having a strong ending.
I like the feeling that I've built towards something, and that thing is going to be what's going to ultimately decide if I win or if I lose. I've always felt like that should be something.
I mean, also too, it all depends. For me, it comes down to is the intent at the end of the game part of the design of the game, or is it a consequence of the design, right? So if the designer means it to be that way, okay, I might not like it, but if that's the way it's meant to be and it does it well, then it's just my taste that's getting in the way of it. So I'm kind of, it all depends. It all depends on the experience for me at least.
This is interesting. The ending of this game is interesting because I had talked about Eclipse a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And Eclipse is a big fighting game, right? It's a combat game. And so it usually leads up to the last few battles. And that's a good feature of Eclipse. This is interesting because this also leads up to a specific event at the end of the game, which for a Euro game like this is actually pretty rare, right? Because like Ryan said, it's usually about building up your area or your network or whatever it is that you're building up, and then just seeing how good that was compared to everybody else.
Triggering right. The game. Yeah.
And so that's what most of these games are like, this style of game. This is different. I mean, it's still all there. You're building like buildings on your farm. You're building features on your farm. You're going to get points for all the sheep that you've bought, everything like that. So all that is there, but then it all depends on this last storm, right? And what happens there, depending on how you've been playing the game and how successful you've been, it could switch on you like a dime, right?
If the levee breaks, yeah.
Yep, the levee can break, and everything you did is suddenly just
washed away.
Whereas you could be building up and hoping that dam breaks by building up different things, right? By contributing to the dike, by selling off sheep early, things like that, or focusing on your farm buildings. And then you actually want everybody else to lose their sheep, so you might want that dam to break. And so I like that idea of just that building up to a final event, and then whatever happens is going to happen after that. And I don't mean that as though this is completely random. That's not the case. You are aware of both possibilities, right? And you kind of have to think about hedging your bets, right? Well, if we don't build up the dam enough, and this breaks, is that going to affect me less than everybody else? And am I okay with that? Right. And so it's a very dynamic game in that sense. It's very fluid. So on the surface, this may seem similar to many games, right? You look at it, and I think most people would look at it and think Agricola, right? Yeah. or any other kind of farming type pastoral game.
Any
But it
Rosenberg.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. But it actually when you're playing it, it actually feels different than that. It feels quite a bit different because of this flooding opportunity. And now it's still got similar elements. I really like the buildings that you can build. They do some really cool things. You've got the fencing idea. You've got to have fences for your sheep and keep them all in the right amount of squares and all that. But it does feel different because you're very reliant on other players and you're very reliant on what's happening throughout the game at each of the different stages. It's not the easiest game to learn because, like I said, there's a lot of little fiddly rules that you kind of gotta keep track of. And so it's hard to see, and it's really hard to see how the game works the first game, right? It's hard to see exactly how all the dynamics are going to work out. So you definitely want a learning game. But for those who like resource-based games like this, but you want a unique element, you want something that takes elements and does something different with it, LowLands is the way to go. Yeah, I really like LowLands. I'd say it's a middle shelf game. It's not one that comes out too often, but it came out a couple of years ago, and I just don't think that it gets enough attention because it really is something different, I think.
Yeah, this was. I think you nailed it. Really, I think this was a hidden gem amongst a lot of different games that were coming out. Because what year? I'm just trying to look at what year this came out again.
2018.
2018. So yeah, so a couple of years ago, you're in the middle of your.
That was Gloomhaven year, wasn't it?
Big boom of. Yeah, I think that was a Gloomhaven year.
Yeah. See, and I can't wait to get to it because I found on BGG someone created a solo Automa deck that I printed up and that I want to run through. So, hey, we got something to talk about next time. So you said it's the middle shelf.
Yep.
Does it have any potential to go up?
Well, I wouldn't say it's not going to reach like the echelon of my favorite games. Like it's not a Seven Wonders Puerto Rico. I don't know that it's got that much staying power necessarily. And it's not one that we'll take out and we'll play like every week or anything like that.
Heavy hit, like a lot of heavyweights came out that year.
Well,
and the theme probably has something to do with that, right? Because it's sheep, and people are like, "Well, I've got 80 games about sheep already." But I think you got to emphasize the flooding, the storm surge. And all
that's a cool mechanism. Right on. Well, I think we're at that time, and I'm going to say thank you to everybody who made it to the end of the episode.
Maybe to the end of our ramblings.
The ramblings. So thanks for listening. I'm your host, Norm.
And I was born a rambling man. Ryan. I'm Ryan.
I'm Ian.
And we'll catch you later.
We are Bridge City Board Gamers, and you can find us on Twitter at BC Board Gamers, on Facebook, Bridge City Board Gamers Community, and on YouTube at Bridge City Board Gamers. You can also find us on BGG, Guild number 3039.